Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I never thought working at a Pizza Hut could leave scars deeper than any oven burn, but it did. And no matter how many years pass, the memory of that night comes rushing back every time I smell warm pizza dough or hear a ringtone echo in a quiet room. It happened when I was 19, still fumbling my way through adulthood in Fairvale, a sleepy little town wedged between two highways and far enough from any major city to feel like the middle of nowhere. The kind of place where time stretches long and slow, where everything closes early, except the Pizza Hut. That run-down box with the faded red roof and flickering neon signs was one of the only places open late. Weeknights we closed at 11, weekends at midnight. The front door had a bell that only worked about half the time, and the tiles behind the counter always felt sticky no matter how often we mopped. But weirdly, it felt like mine. I'd been there since junior year of high school, mostly doing deliveries because we were always understaffed. Most nights, I was the only full-time employee. The rest of the crew was a rotating mess of part-timers, high schoolers with curfews, college kids passing through, retirees trying to stay busy. They came and went like ghosts through a screen door. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't mind too much. The tips were decent, and the roads were quiet after dark. I'd slip into a rhythm, driving through winding neighborhoods with my playlist humming softly in the background and the smell of mozzarella filling my car. I never felt unsafe, just bored. Until that night. Fairvale wasn't the kind of place where things happened. It was the kind of town where people waved at every car whether they knew the driver or not. Crime was practically non-existent. Most folks didn't even bother locking their doors, and the biggest gossip was who won the church raffle. My parents had moved to Florida right after I graduated, leaving me behind to figure things out. I was renting a cheap apartment above an old barbershop that had closed down long before I was born. It was quiet, and at the time, that seemed like all I needed. Doug was my manager, lazy, unshaven, perpetually nursing a lukewarm coffee while pretending to do inventory on his laptop. He didn't micromanage, though. Didn't care what I did as long as the money added up and the orders went out. Then there was Marcy, who'd been there forever. She had a sharp tongue, eyes like daggers, and a weirdly maternal vibe when she wasn't roasting you alive. But that night, it was just me and Doug. It was a Tuesday in early October. The air outside had that crisp, leaf-scented bite that made you want to wear hoodies and drink cider. The rush had come and gone fast. 3 deliveries all evening. I was behind the counter, wiping down the sticky laminate and half watching the clock like maybe I could will it toward closing. Then the phone rang. "Pizza Hut Fairvale," I said, picking it up on the second ring. "This is Emma. What can I get started for you?" Silence. For a full second there was nothing but static and a faint humming, like wind through a vent. Then a voice, low, monotone, and oddly flat. Like someone talking in their sleep, or someone who hadn't talked to another person in days. "Large pepperoni, no mushrooms, extra crispy crust." I scribbled it down, frowning slightly. "All right, and what's the address?" 719 Maple Hollow Road. He paused. "It's the gray house at the end. No streetlights. You'll see my car out front." The way he said it, "You'll see my car out front," sent a little shiver crawling up my spine. It didn't sound like a helpful tip, it sounded like a warning, or a dare. Still, I nodded out of habit. "Okay, that'll be $14.87, should be there in about 25 minutes. Click. No goodbye, no thank you. Just the deadline buzzing in my ear. I slowly hung up the phone. Doug looked up from his laptop where he was half watching some conspiracy video with grainy footage of blinking UFOs. "Creeper?" I forced a laugh. "Just weird. No small talk." Gave me the address like he's been rehearsing it. Said I'd see his car out front like it meant something. Doug smirked. "Probably just high. Maple Hollow's out past the ridge, right?" I nodded. Yeah, that road with all the trees and no lights? He shrugged. Well, don't get murdered. Thanks for the pep talk. He went back to his video. I bagged up the pizza and grabbed my keys, heart thudding in a way I couldn't explain. Something in my gut felt tight, like I was walking into a story I didn't want to be part of. He asked what was wrong. I shrugged, forcing a laugh. Just awkward, that's all. Doug grunted and went back to his laptop. I grabbed the pizza, large pepperoni, no mushrooms, extra crispy, and walked out into the cool October night. The air had gotten colder, sharper, like something was shifting just beneath the surface of the town. The drive to Maple Hollow Road took about 15 minutes. It was tucked near the edge of Fairvale, past stretches of quiet farmland and into an area I hadn't been to in years, if ever. That part of town felt forgotten, like time had stopped bothering with it. Half-abandoned houses with sagging porches and wild, uncut lawns dotted the sides of the road. Mailboxes leaned at odd angles, many rusted over or covered in ivy. Google Maps stopped updating halfway there, and I had to switch to reading house numbers, what few were still visible. There were no streetlights, just like he said. The darkness out there felt thick, not just a lack of light, but the presence of something heavier. My headlights barely cut through it, illuminating trees that crowded in close like they were trying to swallow the road. Then I saw it. The gray house. 2 stories. Weather-beaten. Shutters hanging loose like broken limbs. A single light glowed faintly from an upstairs window. The rest of the house sat in darkness. A beat-up black sedan was parked in the gravel driveway, its hood speckled with leaves. I pulled up slowly, killing the engine, but leaving the headlights on. The beam stretched across the front steps and stopped just short of the door. My gut twisted in a way I couldn't quite explain. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe the guy was just awkward, reclusive, hated small talk. Lots of people are like that, right? I grabbed the pizza and stepped out. The air bit into me. Too cold for early October. I walked up the narrow stone path, gravel crunching beneath my sneakers, loud and sharp like bones snapping. Each step made me more aware of how far from anything I really was. I knocked. Nothing. Waited a few seconds. Knocked again. Still nothing. Pizza Hut, I called, trying to sound casual, cheerful even. No answer. I pressed the doorbell. No chime. Of course. Another knock. Louder this time. My nerves were crawling now. Then, a sound, a dull thump, from somewhere inside. Heavy, like something, or someone, had dropped. I froze, pizza box still in hand. Hello? I called, voice unsteady now. My heart was starting to race, still nothing. Then I heard it. Faint, muffled. A woman's voice. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew the sound of panic when I heard it. It was short, abrupt, like someone trying to scream through a wall, or worse, through something covering her mouth. I stopped breathing. Every part of me said, go. Turn around, leave, now. But I couldn't. Not after that sound. I slowly pulled out my phone, pretending to check something just to steady my hands. I took a shaky breath and turned toward the car, thinking I'd drive away, call the cops, and let them handle it. That's when I saw him. In the upstairs window. A face, pale and still, staring down at me, smiling. Eyes flat and lifeless like dead fish left out too long. His lips were stretched too high, too wide, showing every tooth like it hurt to smile that big. My stomach dropped. Then the porch light flicked on. I dropped the pizza. The front door burst open with a crack. He was running, sprinting, toward me. Too fast, inhumanly fast. I turned and bolted, heart pounding in my ears, gravel slipping under my shoes. I barely made it to my car. Threw the door open, slammed it shut. Hit the lock with my elbow as I fumbled for the keys. He was right behind me. I jammed the key in, twisted. The engine coughed to life, and I floored it, tires shrieking as I shot backward out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw him. Standing there. Same smile. Unmoving. Unblinking. I didn't go back to Pizza Hut. I didn't even call Doug. I drove straight to the Fairvale police station, hands shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone trying to call ahead. When I walked in, the dispatcher behind the glass didn't even blink when I started explaining. She waved over an officer who led me into a small back room. I had to tell the story all over again, every detail, while he jotted down notes. A patrol car went out that night. They didn't find the man, but they did find a woman, tied up, gagged, in the basement of that house. Her name was Leah Owens, 21, a college student. She'd been missing for 3 days. He'd taken her from her apartment, drugged her, and kept her in that basement, waiting. She said she was sure he was going to kill her that night, but something distracted him, something at the door. Me. That gave her just enough time to drag herself to the basement stairs and try to scream. Not that I'd saved her, really. I just happened to be the delay. He was caught a week later in a motel 2 towns over. His name was Elliot Grange, 46. No prior record, no known connection to Leah. Just a predator, someone who'd learned to wait quietly in the dark until the right moment. I quit Pizza Hut a month later. Couldn't stomach another delivery. Even now, years later, I flinch when I hear a doorbell. I double-check my car locks 3 times before I drive anywhere at night. And sometimes, in the middle of those long, silent drives, I catch a flash of that smile again. In dreams, in reflections, in places it shouldn't be. People think small towns are safe, but monsters live here too. They just know how to blend in better, and sometimes all it takes to find them is a pizza to... I wasn't always like this. There was a time I used to wake up before sunrise, lace up my running shoes, and jog through the quiet streets of my neighborhood. I'd come back, make scrambled eggs with a dash of smoked paprika, brew fresh coffee, and sit by the window as sunlight poured in. I had a ritual, a rhythm. I was one of those irritatingly optimistic people who whistled in the morning and meant it. I worked at a small accounting firm just outside Topeka. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and then some. I lived alone in a clean, modest apartment with a little balcony where I kept a potted herb garden. I had friends, real ones. We'd do trivia on Thursdays, hike on the weekends, and sometimes get too drunk on craft beer while arguing over movie plots. But that was 2 years ago, before things changed, before everything slipped out from under me, before Pizza Hut became the only consistent thing in my life. It started small, innocent even, like all addictions do. I just finished a brutal tax season, back-to-back late nights, spreadsheets that blurred into static, and eyes that burned from too much screen time. That night, I was too exhausted to cook. Even microwaving something felt like a task designed to break me. So I grabbed my phone and ordered a large meat lovers and a 2-liter Pepsi from the Pizza Hut down the road. It arrived quickly, maybe 20 minutes tops. The box was hot, almost too hot to hold, and the scent, it was overwhelming, familiar and inviting. As I pulled the first slice, the cheese stretched in long golden ribbons, glistening like molten treasure. I devoured it. Not just the food, but the comfort, the silence, the easy satisfaction. It hit all the right receptors: fat, salt, sugar, warmth. It filled a space in me I hadn't realized was empty. Then I did it again. The next week, then twice a week, then every other night. 6 months later, I'd gained nearly 50 pounds. My fridge, once full of vegetables, prepped meals, and almond milk, became a graveyard of expired condiments and forgotten takeout containers. The produce drawer was empty except for a shriveled lemon I couldn't bear to throw out for some reason. My apartment started to rot around me. Greasy pizza boxes stacked like warped building blocks. Soda bottles rolled under the couch. Napkins crumpled and darkened with age. I stopped going out. I stopped picking up when friends called. Eventually, they stopped trying. My boss called me into his office one Friday, concern in his eyes. I'd missed too many deadlines. My performance had slipped. He said he had no choice. I just nodded. No argument. No excuses. I didn't fight for my job. I only fought with the Pizza Hut delivery tracker, refreshing the screen, watching the little red car inch its way to me like it was the only thing tethering me to the world. And then, there was Jeremy. He worked the closing shift at the 29th Street Pizza Hut. I figured out his name from the receipts. Always Jeremy. Thin guy, looked like he was melting into his hoodie. His blonde hair stuck out from under a backwards ball cap, greasy and stringy like overcooked pasta. He never smiled, barely talked. At first, he was just the guy with my dinner. But after a while, he started remembering details. My name, my apartment number, how much I usually tipped. Once, as he handed over the box, he said, "Damn, you're like my biggest customer." I tried to laugh, a dry bark of a sound that didn't reach my eyes. He just stared at me for a second too long before turning away. I couldn't shake it. That sentence, it clung to my brain like mold. Then one night he showed up later than usual. I opened the door and he just stood there still as a statue, holding the box. Steam curled up between us, swirling like a spirit caught in limbo. He looked down at my shirt, an old oversized tee stained with grease and something unidentifiable, and his lip twitched. Then he said, flat and emotionless, "You ever think about how much of this you eat?" No sarcasm, no judgment, just a cold, clinical question, like he was pointing out a dead animal in the road. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just shut the door. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. Pale, bloated face, sunken eyes, grease-slick hair. I didn't recognize myself. I hated what I saw. But I didn't stop. In fact, I started ordering more. Different items, more sides, bigger pizzas, double cheese. I told myself I needed it, that I deserved it. That's when things started to get strange. It was the smell that tipped me off. At first I thought maybe it was just a bad batch, but it kept happening. The familiar buttery savory scent was overpowered by something else. A sourness, a musty undertone that reminded me of damp basements or old laundry. The sauce began to taste metallic, like someone had stirred in rust shavings. The meat had this weird gritty texture like sand mixed with fat. Once I found something in the crust, a bit of hair, long and dark and twisted into the cheese. I tried calling the store, furious and disgusted, but no one picked up. Just dead air. That night, I got sick. Really sick. I was curled up on the couch, sweating through my clothes, shivering and dry heaving until I could barely breathe. My skin felt like it didn't belong to me. My vision blurred. I was scared, truly, viscerally scared, but I didn't call for help. I just lay there, alone, clutching my stomach, drifting in and out of sleep, letting the TV play reruns of shows I couldn't focus on. I stopped ordering for a week after that, but I still kept the app on my phone. When I finally caved, I called the same Pizza Hut, the one on 29th Street. The phone rang a few times, and then a voice answered. Not Jeremy's. A new one. A girl. Young, upbeat, almost too cheerful. "Pizza Hut, how can I help you?" I hesitated. My mouth was dry. "Hey, do you guys still have a guy named Jeremy working there? He used to deliver to me all the time." There was a pause. Not a long one, but enough for something to shift in the air around me. Then she said, "There's no one named Jeremy here. Hasn't been for a while." My skin prickled. I gripped the phone tighter. That can't be right. I used to get deliveries from him all the time. Thin guy, blonde hair, wore his cap backwards. She cut me off gently. "I've worked here over a year. Never heard that name. I'm usually on nights and it's just me and Rick." Rick? I don't know why I asked what I did next. Maybe I didn't want to believe it. "When did Rick start working nights?" She paused again, this time longer. I mean, always? He's been here longer than me. Why? I mumbled something vague about a mix-up, then hung up before she could ask more questions. That night, I dreamed of Jeremy. He was standing in my kitchen, soaked from the rain. His clothes clung to him like wet paper. Water dripped from his sleeves, pooling on the floor. His eyes looked darker than I remembered. Deeper. Empty. His mouth was slightly open, like he wanted to speak, but no sound came out. He raised a slice of pizza to his lips, slowly, deliberately, and began to eat. Each bite was mechanical, wet and slow, his eyes locked on mine the whole time. I should have stopped then. Should have recognized the nightmare for what it was. A warning. A final one. But I didn't. I was too far gone. Too heavy to move comfortably. Too ashamed to be seen. Too scared to leave the apartment. So I ordered again. And again. And again. Then one night, the delivery came in a plain, unmarked box. No logo, no sticker, just brown cardboard taped shut. My stomach growled. My head ached with hunger. I didn't even question it. I opened the box, and the smell hit me like a slap to the face. Rot, sour meat, something old and wrong. Like something that had died and been reheated. Still, I picked up a slice. I bit down. The crust crunched. Dry, brittle like bone. The sauce was cold, metallic. The meat tasted like it had been left out in the sun for days. I gagged, dropped the slice, and stumbled back, bile rising up my throat. That was the moment I finally woke up. The apartment spun around me, boxes stacked to the ceiling, the walls stained with oily fingerprints. I didn't even recognize the place anymore, or myself. I called 911. When the responders arrived, they had to break part of the doorframe just to get in. One of the firefighters helped me up, his hands firm under my arms. The EMTs didn't say anything cruel, but their eyes lingered too long. I saw the judgment in the corners of their mouths, behind their sterile gloves and calm tones. At the hospital, they ran tests. My vitals were a mess. Severe dehydration. Borderline septic from food poisoning. I overheard a nurse whisper contamination to another. Later, when I was more lucid, I asked the nurse if she'd ever seen anything like it. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Twice, she said. Both times. Pizza, from the 29th Street location. I felt my chest tighten. Do you know anyone named Jeremy? Blonde guy, backwards cap? Her expression changed. Something in her eyes flickered. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. You said, Jeremy? I nodded. Yeah, Jeremy Martin. She took a step back. Her hand touched the counter behind her like she needed to steady herself. He died 2 years ago, she said quietly. He was stabbed during a robbery. In the parking lot. Didn't make it. Bled out behind the dumpster before anyone found him. The room tilted. My stomach churned, and it had nothing to do with food. I filed a report. The health inspector visited the restaurant the following week. The results made the news. Rat droppings, spoiled ingredients, expired meat. But the worst part? They found something else in the dough mixers. Biological material. Human, they said, unidentified. The Pizza Hut shut down permanently. No one was arrested. The management claimed ignorance. Employees denied everything. And strangest of all, no one remembered Jeremy. No photos, no employee files, nothing in the records. Just a ghost name in my memory. Except the girl who answered the phone. She remembered. That was it. It's been 6 months now. I've lost some weight. I go to therapy. I walk a few blocks a day, sometimes more. I even cook again. Simple things. Eggs, toast, rice, real food. I'm trying to live again. But every so often, when the air is thick and the night is too still, I hear a knock at my door. No footsteps, no voice, just the knock. And sometimes there's a pizza box on the steps. No label, always warm. I never open them anymore. But they keep coming. I try to tell myself it's a prank. a system glitch, someone messing with me. But late at night, when shadows stretch and silence gets heavy, I remember Jeremy, his eyes, dark, endless, starving. And sometimes I wonder, what if the hunger was never mine to begin with? I started delivering pizzas because I needed to pay for my textbooks. That's it. No tragic backstory, no life or death situation. Just a broke 19-year-old nursing student at Western Community College trying to make ends meet. The scholarship covered most of the tuition, sure, but not everything. My parents helped when they could. Gas money here, a phone bill there. But I didn't want to be that kid constantly asking for $20 just to survive the week. So I got a job at Pizza Haven, a little chain joint wedged between a vape shop and a rundown laundromat on the west side of Brighton. Think Pizza Hut vibes, but with more grease and less corporate polish. 3 nights a week, I'd throw on the red uniform polo, tie my long dark hair into a ponytail, and clock in for the late shift. It wasn't glamorous, but it was routine, familiar. The smell of garlic and dough clinging to everything, the same routes lit up on my GPS, the warmth of fresh pizzas heating up my Civic's front seat in the winter. After 9:30, things usually got quiet. A couple families, some stoned college kids laughing at nothing, and now and then, a generous tipper who made the whole night worth it. I liked that part, the rhythm of it all. That night was a Thursday, March 6th, cold, windy. The sidewalk still shimmered from earlier rain. I clocked in to the sound of my manager Kendra venting about her ex again. "You ever date someone who picks fights just to dodge admitting they're lying?" she asked, shoving breadsticks into a thermal bag with way too much aggression. "Can't say I have," I said, glancing over the order ticket she handed me. "Lucky," she muttered. "Never trust a man with a tribal neck tattoo and no damn car." I chuckled, shook my head, and grabbed the 2 red delivery bags. My car, an aging silver Honda Civic I snagged off Facebook Marketplace, waited in the lot. It rattled when I turned too hard and always smelled faintly like Parmesan, but it ran, and in my world, that was enough. The ticket read, "Delivery, Apartment 14B, 242 Willow Run Apartments. Name, Charles Payment. Cash time, 10:22 p.m. Willow Run. Not the worst complex in Brighton, but far from the best. Mostly students, a few guys clearly in between jobs, and that one sketchy dude who always paid in quarters. I'd delivered there before, twice, maybe 3 times. I remembered the stairwell smelling like mold, weed, and something vaguely chemical. Still, I never felt unsafe. Just alert. But that night, something was off the second I pulled into the lot. It wasn't just quiet, it was wrong quiet. No TVs glowing behind cracked blinds. No muffled bass from cheap speakers upstairs. Not even the usual laughter from the 3rd floor balcony where stoners usually passed a blunt and giggled into the night. The air felt unnaturally still, like everything had paused. Even the wind, which had tugged at my jacket all evening, seemed to stop at the edge of the lot. I frowned, double-checked the address on my phone. 42 Willow Run, Building C, Apartment 14B. I grabbed the pizzas, zipped up my hoodie, and started toward the building. My sneakers squeaked against the damp pavement, louder than they had any right to. Each step echoed off the stairwell like I was announcing myself to something that didn't want to be disturbed. The stairwell reeked, just like I remembered. Wet drywall, old weed, and that same faint chemical sharpness I couldn't name. I climbed to the 2nd floor and stopped in front of 14B. The door looked normal. Beige like the others. Number plate crooked like someone had tried to fix it and given up halfway through. The porch light buzzed above, flickering just enough to cast a stuttering halo. No sounds came from inside. No footsteps. No murmured TV. But the air around the door, it felt thick. Like walking into a room where someone had just been fighting. Like the tension was baked into the walls. I shifted the bags in my arms and knocked. firm, polite, the way we're trained to. Nothing. I waited 10 seconds. Knocked again, louder, still nothing. I was just about to turn around, already reaching for my phone to call the number on the receipt, when the door creaked open. Just a crack. No chain lock, no light bleeding out. Just a thin slice of darkness. It was so black inside I couldn't tell if the lights were off or if the hallway just ended right there in shadow. Then a man's voice spoke. Low. Flat. Almost like it was coming from a speaker just beyond the door. Come inside, it's Cash. I blinked, caught off guard. Sorry, sir, I said, keeping my tone steady. I can't come in. Company policy, I can hand it to you right here. Silence. No footsteps, no reply. Just the door. Cracked open like a mouth not sure if it wants to speak or swallow you whole. The door didn't budge. It sat there, cracked open just enough to let a sliver of darkness spill out. No movement. Just that same gap. A pause. Then again. Come inside. Not a question this time. Not even a request. The way he said it, flat, emotionless, it chilled me more than if he'd shouted. It was like he was repeating words he didn't fully grasp, like a robot mimicking human language. Sir, I said, my voice firmer, louder, I need to stay outside. If you have the cash, I can take it and hand you your order here. There was a beat of silence. Then a hand emerged from the gap in the door. It was large, pale, hairy. The nails were disturbingly clean, like they'd been scrubbed for surgery. But the hand didn't hold money. It just gripped the edge of the door, tightening until the knuckles whitened. I instinctively took half a step back, clutching the insulated pizza bags closer to my chest like they were some kind of makeshift shield. Can you please hand me the money? I asked again, trying to keep my voice steady. The door creaked open wider, 6 inches, maybe a little more. Just enough to reveal a bit of a black hoodie, a glimpse of a face. A man, maybe mid-40s. It was hard to tell, his face was swallowed in shadow. But his eyes, they were too wide, too still. I dropped it, he said. I swallowed. Dropped what? The cash. It fell inside. His voice didn't change. Come get it. My stomach turned. Every nerve in my body began to scream. Nope, I said, my tone flat, final. All those safety videos from orientation that I'd tuned out, suddenly they came rushing back. Never step inside. Don't follow customers indoors. Use the pizza bags as a barrier. Keep your phone on you at all times. It had all felt like overkill at the time. Now, every bullet point was thudding in my chest like a drum beat. I'll wait here while you grab it, I said, trying to sound firm but not rude. He didn't answer, just stared. I could feel it. His eyes locked onto me, unblinking. Then the door jerked wider. No warning. His hand shot out. This wasn't some cinematic lunge or over-the-top horror grab. It was fast, calculated. He grabbed my forearm hard, his fingers digging in with crushing force. I could feel the blood drain from my hand instantly. The pizza bags almost slipped. Let go, I shouted, twisting, trying to pull free. But he didn't let go. He yanked harder, and I stumbled forward, one foot skidding against the worn, dusty doormat. My heart was slamming in my chest. My left pocket, pepper spray. I let go of one of the pizza bags, shoved my hand into the pocket, wrapped my fingers around the cold canister. Then I sprayed. No hesitation. The jet hit him square in the face through the gap in the door. The sound he made, it wasn't human. A shriek, high-pitched and feral, like something wild and wounded. He let go instantly, recoiling, and the door slammed shut so violently the frame rattled. I didn't wait. I dropped the second bag, spun around, and bolted down the stairs past the silent apartments out into the cold night. My car looked a mile away. My hands shook so hard I dropped my keys twice before getting them into the lock. Once inside, I hit every button on the door to make sure it was locked. Then I called Kendra, my shift lead. The police were already familiar with 14B. The officer who arrived told me they'd been keeping tabs on the guy for months, trying to build a case. Other delivery workers had mentioned weird behavior, but no one had ever made an official report. 3 assaults in the past 6 months. 2 food delivery girls, 1 cable tech. All of them had gotten away. But none had fought back. None had drawn a clear, actionable line of aggression like I had. My call gave them what they needed. 3 days later, they arrested him. I wasn't told the full details, but the detective who phoned me said the apartment was full of evidence, the kind that doesn't make it into press releases. "You probably stopped something worse," he said. "You were smart. You were brave." Pizza Haven gave me a week off. Paid. My dad told me to quit, said no job was worth what I went through. My mom cried and begged me to move back home. And I almost did, but I remembered why I moved out in the first place. The textbooks, the rent I paid myself, the tiny victories that came from living on my own, and the deeper thing, the truth I couldn't ignore. Fear doesn't get to decide who I am. So yeah, I still work at Pizza Haven, still wear the red polo, still drive the same beat-up Civic. But I added something to my uniform. Awareness. And a bigger can of pepper spray. Now every time I walk up to a door, I think of 14B. I remember the cold in my fingers, the way his eyes never blinked, the sound of his scream. But more than anything, I remember that I walked away. Because I listened to my gut. Because I fought back. Because I refused to be dragged into the dark. And that's the part no one can ever take from me. I never thought fear would be the reason I quit a job. Not regular fear. Not the kind that gets your heart racing when your boss yells at you or when you're running late. I'm talking about real fear. The kind that squeezes your lungs at 1 a.m., makes your skin crawl for no obvious reason, and forces you to double-check every door lock in your apartment, even though you just did 5 minutes ago. I delivered pizzas for nearly 2 years, mostly out of the Pizza Hut on Millstone Avenue. It was a quiet spot on the outskirts of Brook Hollow, Kentucky. Small town, barely made the map. Not the kind of place you associate with danger. We had the usual weirdos, drunk college kids pretending to be sober, stoners ordering triple cheese at midnight, the occasional idiot who thought answering the door in just a towel was somehow comedic gold. But nothing ever felt wrong. Nothing that stayed with you after the shift ended. That changed one night. I was 25, living in a cramped apartment above a bait shop. The place smelled like worms and damp carpet, but it was cheap and close to work. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid my bills. I actually liked working nights. Less traffic, fewer entitled soccer moms, more generous tips from late-night regulars. I knew the town like the back of my hand and didn't need GPS for most runs. Half the people knew me by name, or at least recognized my red insulated bag and the busted Corolla I drove. That night felt normal at first. It was a Wednesday, slow like most midweek shifts. I'd just finished a delivery by the high school, a double pepperoni for a family with a yappy dog, when my phone buzzed with a message from Carla, my manager. "Last one for you. 12-mile trip, then you can clock out." I let out a low groan. 12 miles wasn't crazy, but at nearly midnight, that was pushing it. Gas was eating into tips lately and I was tired. Still, overtime was overtime. I tapped accept on the delivery app and read the order. 1 large meat lovers, extra garlic butter crust. Address, 1490 Rudder Lane Extension. Customer name, Glenn H. I frowned. Rudder Lane Extension. That wasn't a street I hit often. It snaked out past the old paper mill, near the railroad tracks and the fringe of the industrial park. Technically in our delivery range, but it was right on the edge. The kind of area where GPS gets confused and cell signal starts to flicker. "Whatever," I muttered, stuffing the pizza into the red bag. I grabbed my coffee, cold and half gone, and slid behind the wheel. The streets were empty, washed in that eerie glow from flickering streetlights. A light mist clung to everything, like the air couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or not. I drove past the 24-hour BP station where Jerry usually gave me a lazy wave from the register. But tonight the place was completely dark. Not just closed, dead. No lights in the booth. No Jerry. I turned off the main road and onto Rudder Lane Extension. My headlights cut through the dark like a knife, but it didn't feel like they reached far enough. On either side of me were chain-link fences strangled by weeds, old warehouses with boarded-up windows, rusted-out trailers that hadn't seen a tenant in years. GPS chirped suddenly, loud in the silence. "You have arrived." I slowed down. In front of me was a narrow gravel drive I hadn't even noticed at first. No lights, no mailbox, no signs of life. Just a leaning wooden post with 1490 spray-painted in dull, faded red. It looked like something from a place time forgot. I pulled over onto the shoulder and killed the engine, leaving my headlights on. The driveway bent around a patch of scrubby trees and disappeared into shadow. I stared for a moment, uncertain. "Okay," I whispered to myself, grabbing the pizza and pushing open the door. "Last one. Just drop it off and get home." The gravel crunched under my boots as I made my way up the drive. The trees lining it were all bare, brittle branches rattling in the breeze like dry bones. It smelled like damp earth and mold, the way old basements do. Then I saw the house. It was small, maybe a two-bedroom from the 60s. The siding was warped and peeling. The roof sagged slightly on one end. One lonely porch light flickered like it had been dying for weeks. No car in the driveway, no porch furniture, no glow from a TV behind the curtains. Just stillness. And then, movement. I stopped dead in my tracks. A man was standing at the end of the driveway, 10 feet from the porch, maybe less. Right where the gravel met the overgrown grass. Tall, easily over 6 foot. He was wearing a gray hooded jacket and jeans, hands at his sides. Just standing there watching me. He didn't move when I spotted him. Didn't wave. Didn't call out. Just stared. My fingers tightened around the pizza bag. Glenn?" I called, trying to sound casual. No answer. He tilted his head slightly like a confused dog hearing a strange sound. That was it. No footsteps, no shift in posture. Just that one eerie movement. I looked back at my car. Still there, headlights shining dimly down the drive, engine off. If I needed to bolt, it wasn't far. I turned back to him. "I've got your order. Meat lovers, right? With garlic butter?" Still nothing. My skin prickled with something cold and primal. Every instinct in my body told me to leave. But I forced a laugh, trying to defuse the tension. "Look, man, I don't want to hang around out here all night. You Glenn or not?" He finally moved. Not forward, just lifted his arm and pointed toward the house. Slowly, deliberately. I swallowed hard. "Okay," I muttered, more to myself than to him. "Cool. Yeah, you want me to bring it to the porch?" No response. I took one cautious step forward, then another. He didn't follow. Just stood there, arm still raised, pointing. His hood shadowed most of his face, but I could tell he wasn't smiling. His whole presence was wrong, like a wax figure that had been left out in the sun too long. Halfway to the porch now. I could feel his eyes on my back even though I wasn't looking. The pizza box felt suddenly too light in my hands. My ears were ringing. The porch steps creaked beneath me as I climbed up. I knocked on the door, waited. Nothing. I turned around. He was gone. I never thought I'd quit a job because of fear. Not the regular kind, stress, burnout, rude customers. I mean real fear. The kind that clutches your chest at 1 a.m., makes your ears strain in the silence, and has you checking every lock twice. The kind that doesn't just rattle you for a night, but stains something inside you. I delivered pizzas for almost 2 years, mostly out of the Pizza Hut on Millstone Avenue, small-town joint on the outskirts of Brook Hollow, Kentucky. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept my fridge stocked and my lights on. I worked night shifts, mostly by choice. Less traffic, more tips, and people tended to leave you alone. I liked that. Brook Hollow wasn't exactly a crime hub. We had our fair share of oddballs, drunk college kids, wide-eyed stoners ordering stuffed crust like it was sacred, and the occasional guy who thought opening the door in a towel was peak comedy, but it was nothing dangerous. Nothing that stuck with you. Until that one night. I was 25, renting a shoebox studio above a bait shop that stank like lake water and regret. The apartment was cheap and I didn't need much. Just a mattress, a coffee pot, and my beat-up Corolla. That night, like most, I had my red insulated bag on the seat next to me, my gas station coffee steaming in the cup holder, and an old playlist of 2000s and 2010s alt-rock humming from blown-out speakers. It was a Wednesday. Midweek orders were usually light. Slow drips of small pizzas and soda combos, maybe a late-night wing order from the factory guys. I was just finishing a double pepperoni out near the high school when my phone buzzed with a notification from the app. It was my manager, Carla. Last one for you, 12-mile trip, then you can clock out. I groaned. 12 miles wasn't just a haul, it was barely in range, and with gas prices where they were, there was a good chance I'd spend more on fuel than I'd make on the tip. But overtime was overtime. I tapped accept. One large Meat Lovers extra garlic butter, 1490 Rudder Lane extension. Customer, Glenn H. I blinked. Rudder Lane extension was barely a road. It snaked past the paper mill and crept along the edge of the industrial park. I'd delivered out there maybe twice. It was technically in our radius, but barely. A weird place to live. I figured it was one of those old properties tucked into nowhere that someone inherited and never left. Some people liked quiet. I checked the time, 11:42 p.m. Still within hours. I grabbed the pizza, slid it into the thermal bag, and climbed into my car. By the time I hit the edge of town, a mist had started to roll in, thick enough to catch the glow of my headlights but too light to be called fog. Most of the street lamps flickered like they were giving up. I passed the 24-hour gas station, the one where Jerry the night clerk always gave me a lazy wave from behind the glass. But tonight, the booth was dark. No light, no Jerry, just a smear of condensation on the inside of the window. I turned onto Rudder Lane extension, my tires crunching the gravel as the road narrowed and the warehouses swallowed the horizon. My GPS chirped once. You have arrived. I slowed to a crawl. To my left was a narrow gravel drive flanked by dying trees. There wasn't a porch light, no mailbox in the usual spot, just a half-rotten wooden post with faded red numbers. Bartrin, 9 The drive curved behind overgrown brush and crooked oaks. I hesitated. Then I killed the engine but left my headlights on. One last drop-off. I muttered and stepped out. Gravel shifted beneath my sneakers as I climbed the drive. Halfway up, the house came into view, squat and wide, maybe a 60s build. The paint was peeling, and the windows looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years. A single porch light flickered dimly. No car, no sound. Just stillness. Then I saw him. A man stood near the edge of the driveway where gravel turned to patchy grass, about 10 feet from the porch. Tall, maybe 6'3", gray hoodie, jeans. He didn't move, just watched me. His arms hung loose at his sides, his hands were empty. His face was smiling, but not a normal smile, not a, hey, thanks for the pizza kind of thing. It was all teeth, stretched too wide, too tight, like someone had described a smile to him, but he didn't quite get it. His eyes never blinked. They were fixed on mine, wide, unbroken, like he was trying to memorize me. I stopped. Delivery for Glenn? Nothing. Just that smile. I took a cautious step forward. One large Meat Lovers. Extra garlic butter. That you? Still nothing. Then, he tilted his head. Slightly to the left. Like a confused dog hearing a high-pitched whistle. He reached into his pocket slowly and pulled out a fistful of coins. Exact change, he said. His voice was flat, soft, like someone reading instructions in a language they didn't speak. He started counting out loud. 1, 2, 3. I just stood there. My fingers had gone stiff from the cold, but it wasn't the wind. Something was wrong. Not horror movie wrong, subtle wrong, deep wrong. Each number echoed, like he was speaking into a tunnel. He never broke eye contact. 7, 8, 9. His breath made clouds in the air. Mine didn't. 12, he said. He held out his hand. I hesitated, then reluctantly reached out and took the coins. Our fingers touched. His skin was ice cold, not cold like chilled, cold like the freezer at work after the compressor fails. I pulled my hand back on instinct. He didn't flinch, just took the box gently in both hands and stared. You drive fast, he said. I blinked. What? You drive too fast sometimes. I backed up. Thanks for the order, I said quickly. My heart was pounding now. Have a good night. I turned, walking fast, not running but close. I didn't look back until I was in the car, doors locked, engine started. He was still standing there, pizza cradled in his arms. That same smile washed in my headlights. I peeled away, tires kicked gravel into the dark. I didn't feel safe until I hit the main road again, where the amber glow of the gas station sign flickered back into view. I tried to tell myself he was just weird, maybe on the spectrum, maybe a recluse. Creepy, sure, but harmless. Then I saw him again, in my rearview mirror, far down the road, walking, same hoodie, same posture, same head tilt. He was walking down the middle of the street, calm, straight, like time and distance meant nothing to him. I floored it. By the time I reached the Pizza Hut, the lot was empty. Carla's car was gone. The windows were dark. We closed at midnight sharp, and it was already past 12:20. I parked out front, engine still running, and sat there breathing like I'd just sprinted a mile. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. One new message. Drive safe. I stared. My hand trembled. I looked up. Near the dumpsters at the far end of the lot, half lost in shadow, someone was standing. Still. Tall. Watching. I didn't wait. I threw the car into reverse so fast I nearly hit the curb, then tore out of the lot, tires screaming, not stopping until I was home. Every light on. Every window locked. Curtains drawn. The next morning I didn't go back in. I called Carla and quit. No notice. No explanation. She was pissed, but I didn't care. I couldn't go back. I couldn't risk ever seeing that face again. That smile. For days I kept checking the street below my window. I started sleeping with the TV on. Every car door slam or gust of wind had me on edge. I changed my number. I never drove down Rudder Lane again. And I never delivered another pizza. I never used to think twice about night deliveries. Most of the time, they were just long stretches of driving through dim, half-asleep neighborhoods, dropping off pizzas to people too tired to cook and racing back before the next order came in. Honestly, it felt like one of the safer jobs I'd had. My name's Daniel Reed. I'm 24, a college dropout still figuring out what the hell I'm doing with my life. I took the job at Red Oven Pizza because it paid a little better than minimum wage, and nobody there cared that I had tattoos or that I mostly kept to myself. I usually worked the closing shift, 4 p.m. to 2 a.m., and by now, I had it down to a routine. Park in the back, clock in, slap a name tag on my hoodie, blend into the background. No small talk, no drama, just clockwork. Red Oven wasn't the kind of place people remembered unless they were drunk, high, or too exhausted to make dinner. It sat on the outskirts of town, just past that gas station with the flickering green E, and before the busted-up mini golf course that hadn't been open since I was in high school. Most of our deliveries were within a 6-mile loop, and over time, I'd memorized the regulars, some by the colors of their porch lights, others by how their dogs lost their minds when I pulled into the driveway. I never really felt unsafe doing this job. Annoyed? Sure. I'd had drunk guys curse me out over forgetting a side of ranch. Some bratty kids once tried to hand me Monopoly money as a tip. There was one delivery where I heard someone crying behind the door, just low, steady sobbing. But they opened up, took the pizza, smiled, and shut the door like nothing was wrong. Creepy, yeah, but nothing that really lingered. That changed last Friday. The night started off like any other. Boring. We were short-staffed again. Jake, the assistant manager, was in the back, elbow deep in dough, cussing at the broken mixer. Our phone girl had quit 2 days earlier, so I was bouncing between taking calls and boxing up deliveries. Around 10:30 p.m., I had just finished wiping down the hot box and was about to clock out when Jake walked up with a ticket in his hand, his face already creased with stress. "Can you take this one?" he asked, not even looking up. "I know it's late, but it came in right before cutoff, just a large pepperoni." I sighed and grabbed my phone. "Where to?" He handed me the receipt. "Some apartment complex on Miller Road. You know it?" I squinted at the address. 2230 Miller Road, apartment B03. My stomach dipped a little. "That's past the train yard, right?" I asked, my tone slower now. "Yeah," Jake said, rubbing his temple. "Kind of on the edge of town." I hesitated. Miller Road wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't comfortable. Mostly industrial space, old warehouses, half the streetlights didn't work, and there were buildings with boarded-up windows and chain-link fences with nothing behind them. The kind of place that felt forgotten, abandoned, off the map. Still, money was money. "All right," I said, pulling my hoodie over my head. "Give me 5 minutes." The drive out there was quiet. Cold, too. One of those early spring nights where the wind slips through every seam of your jacket and even the trees look off, like they're all leaning the wrong way. I left the radio off and let the road hum beneath me. By the time I turned onto Miller, everything felt different. The asphalt turned to patchy, cracked pavement. My headlights caught glints of broken glass in the gutter. The air smelled off, like rust and mildew had been steeping in it for days. One of the few working streetlights buzzed loudly above me, flickering like a dying bulb in a horror movie. It actually strobed for a second, and I slowed down, suddenly aware of how alone I was. The GPS led me to a long, L-shaped apartment building set back from the road. No signs, no leasing office, not even a number painted on the curb, just concrete and shadows. The parking lot had maybe 2 cars, one van with no license plates and a rusted-out sedan slumped on a flat tire. The whole place looked like it hadn't seen a full-time resident in years. I double-checked the receipt. Everything matched. Grabbing the pizza from the seat next to me, I stepped out and headed toward the main entrance. As I got closer, I noticed a small, weather-worn piece of paper taped to the inside of the glass door. The handwriting was shaky, written in red marker. "Deliver to basement door. Follow the hallway." I stared at it for a moment. The basement? That wasn't standard. Most places didn't want strangers wandering around, especially not this late. I thought about calling the number from the order, but the receipt had the caller ID blocked. No name, no callback. Just that address and a single pepperoni pizza. I stood there for a few seconds, watching my breath fog the glass. Something about this felt wrong. I wasn't sure what exactly. Maybe it was how quiet the building was, or maybe it was the absurdly empty lot, like no one had been home for weeks. But I'd already driven all the way out here, and turning back without delivering felt like quitting. I pushed open the door. The lobby smelled like wet drywall and mold, thick and stale, like water had leaked behind the walls and just sat there for years. The overhead lights were dim, barely working, casting a yellow-gray hue over everything. Wallpaper peeled at the corners. There was no furniture, just a cracked tile floor and a stairwell at the end of the hall. A single bulb hung crooked from the ceiling, casting long, trembling shadows across stained carpet and peeling wallpaper. The hallway smelled like mildew and something faintly metallic, like old blood. My shoes made this squelching sound with every step, like the carpet was soaked underneath. It was colder down here. Still, I walked forward. At the far end, a door waited, paint chipped, frame warped, with a crooked little label that read, "Basement." I stopped. My heart gave a single hard thump in my chest. That quiet, primal warning. Don't. I felt it in my gut. Something was off. But I was tired, curious, maybe a little reckless. I'd come this far, right? I opened the door. A steep, narrow staircase led downward, just wide enough that I had to turn slightly sideways to fit. The air sank at least 10 degrees colder the second I stepped through. My breath came out in soft little clouds. It smelled like concrete, wet earth, and something faintly rotten. Halfway down, I paused. There were voices, low, hushed, drifting upward through the cold. Not mechanical, not the rumble of a furnace or the hum of some water heater. It was definitely human, but muffled, like whispers underwater. I couldn't make out any words, just tone and cadence. "Hey," I called down, forcing my voice steady. "I'm here with your pizza." Nothing. No reply. Just that strange murmuring, then silence. I swallowed hard and reached the bottom. A narrow concrete hallway stretched out in front of me, dim and claustrophobic, lit by a single bare bulb at the other end. Rusted metal doors lined the corridor. Most were closed, except for one, all the way at the end, slightly ajar. A sliver of sickly yellow light leaked from inside. I took one slow step forward. My footstep echoed down the hall, sharp and alone. The murmuring stopped. I froze. The air felt denser suddenly, like it had weight. The pizza box in my hands felt heavier too. My grip tightened around it. I thought about turning around, calling Jake, just walking away and pretending this had never happened. But something, curiosity, pride, stubbornness, kept me moving forward. When I reached the door, I leaned in and gently nudged it open with my foot. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The door creaked as it swung open. Inside was a small, windowless room. Cement floor. No furniture except for a folding table in the corner with a dim desk lamp perched on top. The air hit me first, thick with the reek of old meat, ammonia, and sweat. The kind of smell that clings to your nose long after you leave. 6 people sat cross-legged in a circle in the center of the room. They were completely still, backs to me, heads slightly bowed. They weren't talking anymore. They weren't even moving, just sitting there like statues. "I've got your pizza," I said, forcing a chuckle. It echoed weirdly. No one responded. I stepped inside, the soles of my shoes sticking slightly to the floor. One of them, a woman, began to turn. Slowly. Her face was gray and drawn, her skin pale and almost translucent like she hadn't seen sunlight in years. Her eyes were huge and glassy, unblinking. Her mouth hung slightly open, slack like a doll's. Her entire face was expressionless, not blank, just absent, as if no one was in there. Then the others started turning too, one by one. Each face looked nearly identical, hollow, waxy, wrong. Their heads twisted in eerie unison, but their bodies didn't move right away. It was like their necks were on hinges and their limbs were waiting for a signal. I took a step back, the pizza box trembling in my hands. "Who ordered this?" I asked, my voice cracking. The first woman started to rise, but it wasn't natural. Her movements were sluggish, like she was moving through water, or being puppeteered by strings you couldn't see. Her joints bent at odd angles. No resistance, no tension, just slow, deliberate movement. Then the rest of them stood, almost together. Not perfectly synced, but close enough to send a cold wave of panic down my spine. I backed toward the door. "Okay, look," I said, my throat dry. "If this is some kind of joke..." They stepped forward, silent, unblinking, in sync, like they weren't individuals, like they were one thing, one organism moving through 6 bodies. I dropped the pizza. The box hit the floor with a thud and I bolted. The hallway looked longer than before, like it had stretched somehow. My shoes smacked the concrete hard. Behind me, I heard the soft shuffle of feet. Not running, but constant. Steady. Like they knew they didn't have to hurry. I reached the stairs and took them two at a time, scraping my hands against the wall to keep from slipping. My lungs burned. My heart was slamming in my ears. At the top, I burst through the basement door and slammed it shut behind me. I leaned against it, gasping, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Just silence. I didn't wait. I sprinted out of the building, dove into my car, and peeled out of the lot, tires screeching across the cracked pavement. I didn't stop driving until I was home. I locked the doors, checked the windows, and sat on my couch until the sun came up. The next day, I went back to Red Oven. I didn't explain anything, just walked in, handed Jake my name tag, and said, "I'm done." Then I walked out. He didn't ask. That was 3 days ago. I haven't told anyone what I saw. Not really. I've tried to forget it, tried to tell myself I imagined it or it was some weird prank. But last night I found something taped to my front door. It was one of our receipts. No name, no note. Just my address. And one word written in red ink at the bottom. Basement. I still remember the sound of that knock. It was sharp, too sharp. Not the clumsy kind you get from someone delivering flyers or a neighbor needing a jump. This was calculated, firm, deliberate. It sliced through the silence like a bone snapping in a quiet room. I hadn't ordered anything. I wasn't expecting anyone. The sound is still lodged in my memory, years later, like shrapnel I can't dig out. This happened in 2006. I was 22 then, still in college, still trying to figure out who I was. I just moved into my first solo apartment, a one-bedroom in an aging, half-forgotten complex called Mapleview Heights, tucked behind a row of shuttered storefronts in a sleepy college town in Illinois. The rent was cheap, which should have been a red flag, but back then cheap beat safe every time. The building was old, and you could hear almost everything through the walls. Conversations, arguments, TVs, toilets. But I didn't care. I liked the noise. It made the solitude feel less absolute. I wasn't a social recluse, not really. I liked people in doses. I went out maybe once or twice a week with a couple of classmates. But most nights I stayed in, studied, cooked, watched reruns of unsolved mysteries while eating terrible microwave meals. It wasn't exciting, but it was mine. That Friday had been textbook dull. I came home from class around 6, made boxed mac and cheese, then plopped onto the couch with my psych notes. I had a major exam coming up, and I remember glancing at the clock, 8:43 p.m. specifically, just as I flipped the textbook open. Then came the knock. 3 quick taps, not hesitant, not overly loud, but definitely intentional. I froze. I lived on the second floor. The building had a locked entry. No one could just stroll up to your door. You had to be buzzed in. My stomach tightened. I crept to the peephole. Standing there was a Pizza Hut delivery guy, red polo shirt, black cap with the logo, and one of those big insulated bags cradled in his left arm. He looked like he'd had a rough day, mid-40s, wiry build, patchy facial hair. His skin was pale and his eyes, there was something off about them. Wide and watery, too wide, like he was either high or hadn't blinked in a while. "Pizza delivery," he called out cheerfully, voice muffled slightly through the door. I didn't unchain it, just cracked it enough to speak. "I think you've got the wrong place," I said. "I didn't order anything." He leaned in slightly, just enough for the chain to pull taut. His smile stayed fixed, but something behind his eyes twitched, barely perceptible. Not confusion, not surprise, just a stillness. A pause too long. "You sure? This is 2B, right?" he asked, tilting his head a little. "Yeah," I said, steady as I could manage. "But I still didn't order anything." He chuckled softly, more like an exhale, and scratched the back of his neck. "Ah, must be 2D then. My bad." "No worries," I said, and shut the door quickly. I waited behind it, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No muttering. Just silence. Then finally, the heavy click of the downstairs door shutting. I stood there for another full minute. My heart hadn't quite settled. Something about the whole thing gnawed at me. People make mistakes, sure. Delivery errors happen. But his timing, his tone, those eyes, it didn't sit right. I told myself I was being dramatic, paranoid. Still, I left the lights on, double-checked the deadbolt, even wedged a chair under the knob before going to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, phone in hand, absently scrolling through some forum about lucid dreaming. Anything to keep my mind off that knock. I told myself to let it go. It was just a mix-up. That was all. Then at 2:16 a.m., it happened again. Knock, 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 knock. 4 slow, spaced-out knocks. Heavier. No mistaking this one. I sat up instantly, phone slipping from my hand and landing face down on the floor. My body went cold like my blood had drained into the mattress. No one knocks at your door at 2 in the goddamn morning unless it's bad news, or something worse. I got up, quiet as I could, and padded into the hallway. My building had poor insulation, but even with thin walls, the silence was oppressive. No TVs, no pipes creaking, just my heartbeat thudding in my ears. I peeked through the peephole. It was him. Same red shirt, same black hat. But no pizza bag this time. His arms hung loosely at his sides, and he was staring straight at my door. Not shifting weight, not looking around, just watching, waiting. He hadn't rung the buzzer. That's what sent my heart into my throat. He wasn't supposed to be inside. This time the knock wasn't just a knock. It was a hard, brutal slam that made the entire door rattle. I could feel the vibrations under my fingertips through the frame. The door shook like it might give way any second. Then he spoke, voice low and chilling. "I know you're in there." My blood ran cold like ice spreading through my veins. He kept going, his tone a sick mixture of anger and mockery. "You ordered this pizza. I brought it. Don't play games." I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Then, without warning, he slammed his palm hard against the door. "Open up!" I stumbled back, heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it pounding through the wood. I grabbed my phone off the kitchen counter, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. My thumb slipped as I tried to dial 911. A horrible fumbling mess. Finally, the line connected. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice was calm and steady. "There's a man at my door," I whispered, crouching low behind the couch trying to make myself small. "He's trying to get in. I don't know how he got inside the building. He's from Pizza Hut. He was here earlier and now he's back." Before I could say more, a thunderous bang shook the apartment again. He was kicking the door, not knocking, not banging, kicking it like he wanted to break it down. "I'm trying to get in," his voice screamed through the wood. "You think I don't know who you are? You're gonna pay for this." I pressed myself flat behind the couch, clutching the phone like a lifeline, heart thundering like a war drum in my ears. The dispatcher kept talking, her voice a tether to reality, calm but firm. She urged me to stay on the line, to keep talking, to keep breathing, then the loudest bang yet, and silence. No shouting, no kicking, no footsteps, just quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. "Is he still there?" the dispatcher asked gently. I crept back to the peephole, hands trembling. "Gone." "Did he leave?" she pressed. I don't know. I don't see him." "Stay inside. The police are almost there." It felt like hours before the knock came again. This time, real police officers. I nearly collapsed from relief, the tension in my body finally breaking. They searched the whole building but found no sign of him. No forced entry on the front door. Nothing. My guess was he waited for someone to come in late, slipped behind them, and found a way inside. Maple View Heights didn't have security cameras then, so there was no footage. When I told the cops what happened, one of them raised an eyebrow. "You sure you didn't order a pizza and just forgot?" he said, voice skeptical. I think I'd remember that, I snapped back. They took my statement, told me to call if anything else happened, but no arrests, no leads. The next day, I skipped class, stayed home, blinds drawn tight like a fortress. 2 days passed in uneasy silence. I started to convince myself it was over. Then my phone rang. Blocked number. Hello? I said, voice shaky. There was a pause. Then a low, rasping voice. You still owe me. Click. That was the last straw. I packed an overnight bag and stayed with my friend Leah across town. She didn't ask questions, just insisted I stay for a week. I reported the calls to campus security. I called Pizza Hut corporate hoping for some clarity. They claimed no driver matched his description and no record of a delivery to my address that night. A week later, I returned to my apartment during daylight. Leah came with me. Everything looked normal. No signs of forced entry, nothing out of place. I wanted to believe it was finally over. But as we left, heading down the creaky metal stairs toward Leah's car, I noticed something wedged into the handle of my front door. A receipt. A Pizza Hut receipt. No date, no order number. Just the word, paid, scrawled in red pen. 2 months later, news broke about a man named Derek Lang, arrested 3 towns over for stalking and breaking into women's homes. He'd worked at several pizza chains, including Pizza Hut. His job gave him the perfect cover. He'd scope out potential victims while on the clock, memorizing schedules, habits, apartment layouts. Then, off the clock, he'd come back, sometimes breaking in, sometimes just watching. One woman was found unconscious in her bathtub. Another had all her windows blacked out with trash bags the day she came home from class. When police searched his apartment, they found notebooks, dozens of them filled with names, apartment numbers, and schedules. My name was in one of those notebooks. So was my address. And so was the chilling phrase he had whispered through my door that night. You still owe me. She answered the door. She unlocked the chain. She would open it again, if he ever came back. But I wasn't going to find out. I moved out of Mapleview Heights the following week. Finished my degree while living with 2 roommates in an apartment with real security. Thick doors, buzzers, cameras, the whole deal. I changed my phone number. Got a dog for company and protection. Now I don't answer the door unless I'm absolutely sure who's standing on the other side. Sometimes late at night I still wonder what would have happened if my door had been weaker, if I hadn't screamed when he started kicking, if the cops had been slower to arrive, or if I'd frozen and not fought back. The memory still lingers. I still order pizza sometimes, just never from Pizza Hut. Stay inside, the dispatcher had said that night. The police are almost there. Only a few minutes passed, but it felt like an eternity. When the real police finally knocked, I nearly collapsed from relief. They swept the building, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, but there was no sign of him. No forced entry anywhere. My guess was he waited for someone to come home late, slipped in behind them like a ghost. Mapleview didn't have security cameras then, so no footage to check. When I told the cops the whole story, one of them looked skeptical. You sure you didn't order a pizza and forget about it? He asked, raising an eyebrow. I think I'd remember that. I snapped, tired of their doubt. They took my statement and told me to call if anything else happened. But no arrests, no leads. The next day I stayed home with all the blinds drawn tight. 2 days passed in silence. I started to think maybe it was over. Then the phone rang. Blocked number. Hello? I said, voice trembling. A pause. Then a low, raspy voice whispered, You still owe me. Click. That was it. The last straw. I packed an overnight bag and crashed at my friend Leah's place across town. She wouldn't let me leave for a whole week. I filed a report with campus security. Called Pizza Hut corporate, hoping for answers. They claimed none of their drivers matched the description. No record of a delivery to my apartment that night. A week later, during the day, I went back to my apartment with Leah. Everything was exactly as I left it. No sign of forced entry. I wanted to believe it was really over. But as we headed down the creaky metal stairs to Leah's car, something caught my eye. Tucked into the handle of my front door was a receipt. A Pizza Hut receipt. No date, no order number. Just one word, scribbled in red pen, paid. 2 months later, a man named Derek Lang was arrested in a neighboring town. He was charged with stalking and breaking into several women's homes. He'd worked for various pizza chains, including Pizza Hut. His job was a cover, a way to scope out victims. Once he learned a building's layout, he'd come back after hours, finding ways in. Sometimes he broke in. Sometimes he just watched. One woman was found unconscious in her bathtub. Another had all her windows blacked out with trash bags when she came home from class. When police searched Lang's apartment, they found dozens of notebooks filled with names, apartment numbers, schedules. My name was in one of those notebooks. So was my address. And so was the phrase he whispered through my door that night. She answered. She opened the chain. She will again.